So, as I've said, oligopolies are a really interesting market structure because they can be studied more closely than things like monopolistic competition, which has like millions upon millions of business firms and actors and all sorts of things involved there. It's too much to measure. But if we study oligopolies, because they have few firms, we can see how they engage in something called game theory. All right? So several big Nobel Prizes have been awarded in the last 20, 30 years regarding game theory and the understanding of behavioral economics, why people make the choices they do. Remember, economics is the study of choices. And so we're trying to mathematically figure out why people do what they do in certain instances. And in some cases, why they rationally come to irrational conclusions. And in other cases, why their irrationality is actually predictable, and we can bring it into the realm of understanding it. Okay? So we're going to start with something really simple that most policemen know and are taught, right off the bat when they enter the police academy. It's known as the prisoner's dilemma. So what we've got here is we've got a grid that's going to give us different outcomes. And this is called a payoff matrix. All right, so I've plugged in some numbers. We're going to see how this works. So the police get a call that there's been a break-in at a building and they've heard a shot. And they go over to the building and they go inside and they find two guys. And they find a dead body on the floor, the store owner, and they arrest both of these guys. Now, initially, both of these guys say, hey, we broke in. That's true. We were trying to rob things, but this guy was dead when we got here. We didn't do anything. And the police don't have any evidence because those guys ditched the gun before the police came in and they can't find the gun. And so they have no idea of knowing whether this body was there beforehand or whether these guys committed the crime. Now, more than likely, that's what happened, but the police need evidence. They have to get something to prove it. So they can certainly prove that these guys are burglars. They were there to steal, and they're going to get 2 years each for burglary. So if they don't talk, prisoner A and prisoner B, if they don't talk, they're going to get 2 years for burglary, breaking and entering. All right? Now, prisoner A and prisoner B are immediately separated. This is what the police are taught to do in these kind of cases so that they can't, concoct a story. But there's another reason too. Because what the police do is they say, hey, look, you're saying you're not going to talk and you're going to get 2 years for this. But if the other guy rats you out, then you're going to get 10 years and he's going to get 1 year. Okay? Now, they tell this to prisoner A. They also tell this to prisoner B. They tell him the opposite. If you rat the other guy out, you'll get 1 year, and the other guy will get 10. So, they can't talk to each other. And what they do is, in their minds, they look at their payoff matrix. So, prisoner A here says, okay, I'm going to get 2 years for burglary, but if I rat out the other guy, I'm only going to get 1 year. That's better than what I have right there. That will improve me by 1 year of life, freedom, a year sooner. Plus, if I think about person B, he's a thief. Can I really trust him? What if he rats me out? I could get the 10 years. So what does prisoner A do? They immediately talk to the police and say, yeah, it was prisoner B. He's the one that killed him. Okay? Now, prisoner B is sitting over there thinking, prisoner A is a thief. I can't trust that guy. Sure, we could rob stuff together, but he's not going to, have my back. And so he looks at his payoff and he says, well, there's 1 year, or I could get 2 for burglary, or 1 year if I rat on my friend. I'm going to rat on my partner. And so he says, yeah, we killed that guy, but it was person A who pulled the trigger. And so what happens is they both turn evidence over on the other one, and they go before the judge, and they both get 15 years for, negligent homicide and breaking and entering. So this is what happens in these cases. Both of the prisoners look at their payoffs, 2-1, and they say, well, I should go for the 1. 2-1, well, I should go for the 1. So they both talk, they both rat, and they both get, over here, 15 years to life. Murder and breaking and entering, okay? If they'd had just stayed here, they would have each gotten 2 years. But because they rationally only look at 2 and 1, 2 and 1, then they, in that case, they rat on each other, and they don't actually get what they thought. They get 15 to life. All right? Now, the police understand this sort of logic right here, and that's why they separate them, and that's why they offer them those choices. Because this is the problem. These two prisoners came to an irrational conclusion by doing the rational thing. See, they looked at 2 versus 1. The rational thing would be to choose the 1. But it turns out because they're both dependent on each other's decision, it ends up in this other category, and it's a suboptimal outcome for the prisoners. It's a win for society, but it's not for the prisoners. Okay? So they did what they thought was rational, and they got to an irrational conclusion. And this kind of thing can happen all the time. For example, in business over here, we're going to have Coke and Pepsi. All right? And each of them have to make a decision. Are they going to advertise or not advertise? Okay? No advertising. So, is Pepsi going to add or no ad? Is Coke going to add or no ad? And what they do is they're competing for market share. If they advertise a lot, they're going to steal customers from the other one. Okay? So initially, what we've got is that Coke and Pepsi, Coke is 80% and Pepsi is 20%. And they're each up here spending some money to keep that in place. Now, Pepsi sends someone to Coke, and Coke meets with them, and they say, hey, look, we're spending all this money. And what we really should do is we should just keep our 80-20. We'll just keep our market share like it is, and we'll both agree to spend nothing on advertising. So no one's really going to change their mind or their habits. And we can each save $10 million as a company if we both agree not to advertise. All right? And Coke says, yeah, sure, let's do that. And they shake on it and they say, okay, we're going to do this. No advertising for 1 year from either of us, and we agree. So both leave with the agreement that these are their outcomes. They're going to save $10 million each. They're going to keep things just as they are with market share. Coke has 80, Pepsi has 20. And things are going to go along just as they have, and they're both going to save money. The problem is this ends up with the prisoner's dilemma. Does Coke trust Pepsi? Does Pepsi trust Coke? And it turns out, no, they don't. And so what happens is Coke says, if we advertise and they don't advertise, we can steal almost the entire market. We can have 95% and Pepsi will only have 5%. So it'll cost us $10 million, but Pepsi won't spend any and we'll steal all their market share and we'll make it all back and then some. Meanwhile, on the other side, Pepsi is saying, hey, if we spend $10 million and Coke doesn't, if we advertise and no ad from Coke, Coke's going to lose a bunch of market share. They'll go from 80 to 50, and we'll go from 20 to 50. Man, we'll make a ton of money. So we've talked them into not advertising, and we'll do it anyway. We'll stab them in the back, and we'll steal all their customers. And so what happens is in both the boardrooms, both of them agree that they need to advertise in order to gain market share. And so what happens is both of them advertise. Both of them waste $10 million each, so a total of $20 million spent on tons of advertising. And it keeps everything static. Coke stays at 80%, Pepsi stays at 20%, and it's just like over here, except they spent $20 million to stay right where they were. So they came to a rational decision that if we advertise and the others agree not to, we'll get all the money, you know? But because they both came to that rational decision, it led to an irrational and inefficient outcome. $20 million got spent on advertising that changed no one's minds. All right? So this is the problem that economists have wrestled with for many, many years and has only recently been solved. How do rational decisions lead to irrational outcomes? Because they've seen it all the time. You might have even experienced some of these things. It's the fall right now that I'm doing this video. So you're out raking leaves, and you rake them all up, and you rake them over to the side of your yard, and you hope the wind blows them into your neighbor's yard. And what your neighbor does the next day is they rake all the leaves and hope that the wind blows the other way back into your yard. You're both doing what you should do, raking leaves, but no one's really picking it up because they're lazy. They want the other person to do it. And so the leaves go back and forth and a bunch of people rake leaves. Same kind of thing in the winter. You get out there and you've got to shovel snow off your sidewalk. So you shovel it into the street. And what does the street plow do? They got to clear the street, so they go charging along with their snow plow and it blows it back up onto the sidewalk. So you get out the next day and you shovel the sidewalk and throw it into the street. Back and forth the snow goes. So you're both doing something rational. You've got to clear your area. But the problem is it leads to an irrational outcome and a lot of wasted effort. All right? So these are the kind of actions that they see in businesses and in people's personal lives and in prisoners' decisions. They see rational actions leading to irrational outcomes. All right? So that's what we see with game theory and behavioral economics. Now, these can get really complex, and they have, super mathematical combinations of multivariate equations and regression analysis and chi-squared, dominant theory matrices. Whew. Okay. So you can get into that if you want to when you major in economics. All right? That's some of the fun stuff I had to do, which some of you math people out there might think is pretty fun. But we'll see. Okay? So what you've got are some things that they discovered. Some choices are dependent on the other party. See, here in the prisoner's dilemma, your choice is not just, should I go for 2 years in prison or 1 year in prison? Because that's how the person sees it. But really, what does the other person do? Are they going to rat me out? See, what they do matters to what I should do, because the payoffs are different if I know what the other person's doing. That's why the police separate them, because they know if they knew each other, they would have arrived at don't talk, and they sit there and we can't get them for murder. So that's one of the things they discovered, is that oftentimes optimal strategies in game theory actually depend upon what the other person's going to do. And we're going to watch a game show out of England. We're going to do that after this. And we're going to see that the decisions other people make determine what you're going to do. And then on the final one, we're going to see how you can actually beat it. There's a trick to this. And it's something that people stumbled upon. We'll talk about that later. But optimal strategies in game theory oftentimes are determined by what the other group or the other person or the other business is going to do. So unless you know fully what they're going to do, you have a hard time making a decision. And so that often leads to irrational outcomes, like wasting money on advertising or going away to prison for longer than maybe you could have gotten away with. So sometimes, though, there's a dominant strategy. And this occurs in business. Sometimes business people have just ad or ad. Like their dominant strategy is just always advertise. And so we know what they're going to do so that the other business can then make a choice between ad and no ad. And usually when that occurs, you have much more rational outcomes. Okay? So it usually leads to a business only pursuing one choice. So if you know what your dominant strategy is, and it's the same on either side, that's what you're going to do. And it also helps all your competitors, because if they know what you're going to do, they can then plan accordingly. So it turns out that some oligopoly businesses are more efficient than others. Because if they have a dominant strategy, then all the other businesses can line up according to the dominant strategy of the one business, and everything is more efficient. So you're left as an economist, everyone was sort of scratching their heads like, that oligopoly is really efficient, but that oligopoly over there is not. Why? And this is what explained it, and I think Gary Becker was I think it was Gary Becker and Richard Thaler who won the Nobel Prize for understanding dominant strategies versus optimal strategies. I think you see Richard Thaler in The Big Short. He appears with Selena Gomez explaining derivative equations. Anyway, it's a good movie except for the swearing. But yeah, he's in there. So yeah, that's quite a breakthrough, is that they're understanding why they make the choices they do. There was also a mathematician who won the Nobel Prize for economics. His name was John Nash. If you've ever seen the movie A Beautiful Mind, it is about him. He eventually develops like schizophrenia, and he has problems and issues with that, but he had an amazing, insightful mind into how things should work. Okay? So we might be able to watch a clip on that, I think, from his movie A Beautiful Mind, where he talks about Adam Smith and economics and the revision of that. But one of the things that he adds is in the area of game theory. It's not the only thing, but he added a lot there. And so what he found was that sometimes there is a Nash equilibrium, they call it. So that it could be that if Pepsi chooses here, then Coke chooses here. But if Coke chooses here, then Pepsi chooses there. But if Pepsi chooses there, then Coke, then Pepsi, then Coke. So you actually get an oscillating set of choices, because this is another problem that has plagued economists. Why, given the same set of circumstances, do businesses choose one thing sometimes and one thing another? Why do they oscillate back and forth between their choices? Because it seems to be random. But John Nash actually solved it, and it turns out it's not. Now, I'm not going to get into the math of that, but let me see if I can explain it with something that people might understand a little better. So you've got a really good sports star, LeBron James. And there's 3 seconds to go in the game, and the Lakers are down by 1 point. So they go to the timeout, and here we got 3 seconds. We got to call our play and see what we're going to do. Now, who do you give the ball to shoot the final shot? And the Laker coach is thinking, well, we're got to give it to LeBron because he's our best player, you know? He's one of the greatest players out there, and so he's going to take that final shot. It's our best chance of winning. The other coach in the huddle is going, hey, you know, they're going to get it to LeBron because he's the best player. But then the Laker coach says, yeah, everyone knows that LeBron is the best player. We're going to go to him, so they're going to triple or even quadruple team him. Other people are going to be wide open, and so LeBron, guarded all those people, probably can't make the shot, but the other people can get it and probably make it easier. So, okay, LeBron, you're going to be a decoy, and we're going to go with someone else. But then the Laker coach thinks, yeah, but everyone knows LeBron's going to get it. So they know I'm a smart guy, and I'm not going to give it to LeBron. So they're going to not, go guard LeBron. They're going to guard everyone and then single cover LeBron because they know I'm going to go to... You see how this goes in a circle oscillating back and forth? Everyone knows it's going to LeBron, but if it goes to LeBron, the other guys are going to be open. But it's not. And so what happens is the time is ticking down, and the coach finally just has to say, give it to LeBron. That's... And in another game, they'll be like, don't give it to LeBron. There's no rhyme or reason behind it. They just have to make a snap decision, and so it oscillates between different choices in the payoff matrix. There is no dominant strategy. In fact, there's multiple dominant strategies, and the decision is simply a random flip of the coin. That's a Nash equilibrium. Same thing when, what's a famous soccer player? Ronaldo or Messi, they go up to take a penalty kick. Do you kick it to the left or to the right? And the goalkeeper's thinking, okay, Messi goes to my right like 70% of the time, so I should go right. But Messi's really smart, so he knows I'm going to go right, so he's probably going to go left. So I should go left. But Messi knows that I'm smart and I keep track of statistics, and so he knows that he goes right, so he'll probably go left, and he knows that I know that he'll go left, so he's probably going to go right, so that you see how it oscillates back and forth, and so eventually the goalkeeper just has to guess. And Messi also just guesses. In fact, I think Ronaldo in an interview said he doesn't even know himself whether he's going to kick it to the right or the left when he approaches a penalty kick. He just runs up to the ball, and at the last second he makes a snap decision, left or right. And so there's no way to track it. In his mind, he just makes it a randomized decision. So it's a Nash equilibrium, left or right, left or right. Okay? So there are choices in the world like that where there's dominant strategies, and there are choices where there's optimal strategies that are dependent upon the other person's choice, and then there's Nash equilibriums where there is oscillating multiple dominant strategies. Gets pretty wild, huh? So that's some of the stuff that we've learned in the last 10, 15 years regarding game theory and behavioral economics. Why are some businesses profitable and others not? Why do they pick the strategies they do? And it seems like they're shooting themselves in the foot. We're finding that a lot of the decisions that are made are rational decisions that in some cases lead to irrationality. Some of them are rational decisions because they're obvious, and some of them are rational decisions that result in random choices. They're like kind of strange when you hit a Nash equilibrium. Okay? So those are some of the things just to keep in mind when we're looking at behaviors in economics, why some firms do what they do, why some sports stars do what they do, why some coaches do what they do, why some people in their lives do what they do. Prisoner's dilemma. Okay? So you need to understand that there is a reason for why they do it. It's not always apparent, and it's not always an optimal outcome, but it is usually rational. All right. See you in class.